Good morning everybody and welcome to today's English lesson. So first of all you will need your English book and a pen, and you will need to write today's date and learning objective. To write a description using prepositions. Pause until you are ready. So today we're going to read the first chapter of Beowulf. Now you don't have this in your packs, we're just going to read it on the screen together. So chapter 1, The Great Hall. Long, long ago, Denmark was a wild place. Gruesome monsters roamed the misty moors. At night, they howled and growled and shrieked and snarled. The king of the Danes, a warlord named Hrothgar, refused to be scared. He built a huge hall for himself on top of a craggy hill at the edge of the moors. The hall was made of the finest wood, decorated with ivory, silver, and dazzling gold. The king called it Heorot. Each night, the king invited his bravest warriors to a lavish feast of roasted meat with jugs of frothing ale. The huge hall shook with singing and laughter. I wonder if you can work out what the word lavish means in that sentence. Have a look at the picture for a clue. So if it's a lavish feast, that means it's a really big meal. There's lots of very fine and fancy food. There's plenty for everybody to eat. They're not going to run out. The men ate and drank until they fell asleep, safe together in the warmth. But outside, something evil was rising. And that is the end of the first chapter. So what we're going to do today is we're going to write a settings description of the inside of the hall. And I've got here for you, I've got two different pictures. So the first one is the picture from the book that we saw on the last page, which shows the hall when it's full with warriors. And then on the top picture, I've also found a different idea of what the hall might look like. And this one doesn't have any people in, just because it will be easy to see what the room might be like. So you've got to imagine this is maybe 5 minutes before the party starts, when everything's set up and ready to go, but the people haven't arrived yet. And on your book, you are going to do a bit of a plan. So you're going to be thinking about, in this setting, what could you see, touch, hear, and smell. Just move that over there so you can see it properly. See, touch, hear, and smell. Now, the way that you do this in your plan is up to you. You might want to do a list for each of the different senses. You might want to do a spider diagram. You might want to split your page up into 4 different boxes and organise it that way. It's up to you, whatever works for you. So you're going to pause this video in a moment, and you're going to take your time to think of some different words and phrases that will help you out when you're doing your writing. Now, I appreciate that it's a little bit difficult to do this at home, because normally we would be working at school, we'd be thinking of ideas together on the board. But I want you to try and come up with some of your own to think, what would help me? So you might be noticing things like the flags hanging down here. But that might not really help you that much in your writing. So you might be thinking, what phrase could I use to describe this flag? Is it bright? Is it colourful? Is it faded and worn? Is it standing still, or is it fluttering in the breeze? Is it made of a heavy cloth? Is it made of a light silky cloth? So some of these you might need to use a little bit of your own imagination, but there are lots of clues on the pictures here as to things that you could speak about. So I would now like you to pause and spend the next few minutes thinking of different ideas for what you could see, touch, hear and smell. Make sure you have a few for each one. And then when you're ready, unpause and carry on. So I've had a go at thinking about some different things that might help us in our writing. Now, you might have thought of some similar things. You might have thought of something completely different, and that's absolutely fine. It would be really boring if all our writing looked the same. And if all of your writing only had these ideas in, again, that's going to be pretty boring for us to mark. So I started off by thinking about what I could see, and I looked at both pictures. I looked at the candlelight flickering, giving it a bit of movement in the scene. It's not going to be a completely still photograph when you're actually in the room. And if the the candlelight is flickering, look, there's no light bulbs. This was a long, long time ago. That's going to make the shadows dancing. So it'll look like the shadows are moving about because the candles are flickering. And see plates piled high with food. Sorry, plates piled high. A table laden with food. If it's laden with food, there's so much food on it that it can't take any more. You couldn't fit any more food on there. Jewel-encrusted goblets overflowing with mead. So if you have a look here in this picture, you can see this person here is holding a cup, and there's a cup here on the table as well. They're not a beaker or a glass like we would have our drinks out of. You can see that it's more of a goblet or a chalice, something a little bit more old-fashioned because this happened hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Now, I can't really see any jewels on these goblets, to be totally honest with you. But I let my imagination work a little bit. I thought, this is a really fancy feast. Are they just going to have plain, boring cups? Probably not. They're probably going to get the fancy stuff out. So I then used my imagination to add to the picture just a little to say that they were jewel-encrusted goblets. I'm not going to use my imagination and put in something completely ridiculous. I'm not going to say that they were drinking out of a horse's skull when clearly on the picture that's not happening. So I can add to it a little, but I'm not going to completely make up something that just couldn't even be there. So I said the jewel-encrusted goblets overflowing with mead. You can see here that it's so full, it's spilling out of the sides. And mead is like an old-fashioned type of beer. It said here that it was frothing ale. And ale is another word for beer. So there we go, an old-fashioned beer. I've got flags fluttering in the draft. So not just that they're fluttering, but why are they fluttering? It's an old building. It's made of wood and stone. There's going to be the wind coming through the windows. So I've said they're fluttering in the draft. And then I had a look on the walls as well, up here particularly and behind the king too. The scarred shields of legendary heroes. So if they're scarred, that must mean that they've been used. They've got these lines on from when they've been in battle, from when they've been hit with swords. And those legendary heroes reminding our warriors maybe what or who they're fighting for. Okay, let's have a look at what they might be able to hear. So we've got a crackling fire. Booming voices. So they're not going to be talking in whispers. They're going to be shouting. They're going to be loud. They're going to be laughing. Imagine when you are with your friends on the playground. You're not talking really quietly to each other. Your voices are loud. They're carrying. You're confident. Perhaps there might be enthusiastic, but not tuneful singing. So they're singing their battle songs together and they're being really loud and they're really enjoying it. But perhaps it's not that pleasant for other people to listen to. And what about slurping? Those really full goblets, really kind of getting into the mead, making sure that they're enjoying it. Maybe they've got lips smacking as they're eating through all that delicious food. And then I thought, what might they be able to smell? So I thought, how about sweaty warriors? Maybe they've just come back from a day of battle. They've probably not had a bath and got changed first. That doesn't seem like something a warrior would do hundreds of years ago. This is definitely more than 100 years ago. So maybe they're sweaty. Maybe they're sweet, fruity pies. Have a look at the difference of spelling between sweaty, E-A, and sweet, double E. So make sure you get the right one there. You don't want a sweaty pie. That is disgusting. So they might be smelling sweet, fruity pies. Dense, pungent smoke. So maybe that smoke is really like every time you breathe in, it really gets to the back of your nose. And then I thought, what would they be able to be feeling? What would they be able to touch? So I thought maybe they've got sticky, gooey juices running down their fingers. You can see they're not using knives and forks. So maybe as they're biting into that juicy meat, it's running down their fingers. And maybe they're kind of having to lick it off. Perhaps, especially with the king, but maybe under everybody else, they've got plump cushions, like a really nice soft cushion to sit on. They'd be able to feel the warmth of the fire. as it's warming up the room. Perhaps the tablecloth is feeling rough. I don't know. It's up to you. So these are just some ideas to get you started. They are not all of the ideas. They are not the best ideas. They are just some ideas if you're starting to feel a little bit stuck. So you'll remember from yesterday's lesson that we were talking about using prepositions. We need to use these prepositions in our settings description too. So I want you to pause for a second. How many prepositions can you remember from yesterday? Challenge yourself. Can you remember 5 prepositions for space, so where things are in a room, and 5 prepositions for time, where when things happen? Okay, let's see if you could remember some of these. So, in our yellow box, we've got our prepositions of space. You might have something like opposite, underneath, on, inside, between, through, or any of these words would have been fine. And our prepositions of time, things like after, before, by, during, from, since, until, saying when these things happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how you might put these into your own writing. So I'm thinking, which shall I use first? I like the shields. I was quite proud of that one. So I think I'm going to use that one first. So the scarred shield. Oh, no, wait, let's make it better. The scarred and stained. Maybe they've still got like those blood drips running down them from where they've kind of been used in battle. Shields. Oh, look at that. I've got 3 S's there. That's a good bit of alliteration. Scarred and stained shields of legendary heroes. Now, I could say we're on the wall. Ooh, wall. On is a preposition. It would be a preposition. It'd be kind of boring, though. So let's see if I can make it a bit more exciting. So maybe they hung proudly upon the wall. So there we go. Upon the wall, upon there is going to be our preposition. Upon the wall. Now I could end my sentence here. That would be fine. But you know what? I'm going to challenge myself a little bit further. I'm going to really push myself and I'm going to use a colon between my clauses. So I've got here my cause. What's happening here? The shields are on the wall. And what effect does that have on the warriors? Reminding those that saw them of the glories and perils of battle. So you can see now in my description, I'm not just saying there are shields on the wall. I'm really using my sentences to create the best picture possible in the mind of my reader. Let's have a go at a different one. Oh, how about I use a preposition in a fronted adverbial? This is actually a really great way to use a preposition because when you use a fronted adverbial, especially a fronted adverbial of time and of place, you often end up using a preposition without even realizing it. So this time, I think I'm going to talk about the fire. So I'm thinking I use a preposition of space. I forgot the word then. A preposition of space. Where is that fire? It's in the center of the room. So in the center of the room. There we go. I've got my preposition there. In my prepositional phrase, my fronted adverbial. In the center of the room. I don't want to just say there's a fire. That's boring. Let's see. Oh, I said it was crackling. That's good. Okay. A crackling fire. Now, I can't just leave my sentence there. I need a verb. I need something to happen. So what did it do? It warmed the faces and hearts of the gathered warriors. So I'm not just saying in the center of the room there's a fire. That's boring. Why is the fire there? What is it doing? What's its purpose in the room? Well, it's warming everybody up. So you can see I've included 2 senses in this sentence. I've got crackling for the sound and warmed for the touch, for the feeling, that way. Okay, let's have a go at one more. I've used it in the middle of a sentence. I've used a preposition at the beginning of a sentence. So let's use a preposition at the end of a sentence. Okay, so brightly stitched flags fluttered in the breeze. That's all right. Do you know what? Let's see if I can use a prepositional phrase in a relative clause. How about I do this? Brightly stitched flags. Where are they? Which hung from the tall rafters. That's what we call those beams that go across the top of the hall to hold up the roof. Those are the rafters. So as well there, I've got which hung from the tall rafters, as well as my preposition in at the end. So you can see how I'm using it in the sentence generally, in a fronted adverbial, and also in a relative clause. So now it's your turn. You need to spend at least 30 minutes writing your description. Now, your description should be a paragraph and not just random sentences like I've just shown you. Your writing must include full stops and capital letters, prepositions, conjunctions, adverbial phrases, relative clauses with dashes, brackets, and commas, expanded noun phrases, and appropriate vocabulary. For example, like when I talked about using the cups, instead of saying that it was a glass when it clearly wasn't, that I've chosen a goblet because that seems like something that would have been there. If you're really confident, your writing could also include a colon between clauses like I just did, a semicolon between clauses, and semicolons in an extended list. You need to spend at least 30 minutes writing your description. You can spend longer if you need to, but when I looked at some of your writing from last week, I suspect that some of you didn't spend as long on it as you would have in school. We would normally give you about 30 minutes to do this, and I'm expecting that quality of writing from you. So please make sure that you are thinking about how can I make this settings description the best it can be. You can always rewind the video to have another look at the pictures again if you're wanting to think of some more ideas, if you're wanting to check how I've used prepositional phrases, that's absolutely fine. So, when you've finished, you'll need to take a picture of your work and post it on your portfolio on Class Dojo. This must be done before 1 p.m. There is no worksheet today. Please make sure that your picture is clear so that we can read your fantastic writing. If you need any help or want to ask any questions, the help session on Teams is at 12:30. Remember to read your book for at least 20 minutes each day and make sure you reply to any improvement points on Class Dojo. The help session is at 12:30 today. It was only yesterday when it was cancelled, so please come and see us if you need to. So I will either see you on the help session at 12:30 or tomorrow. Bye!